You've been playing chess for months. You read the chat, watch the videos, and still don't know what half the words mean. This is every chess term that no one bothered to explain. En passant. The only move in chess that captures a piece that isn't even there anymore. Your opponent's pawn jumps 2 spaces forward, landing right next to your pawn, but you have one move, right now, to capture it as if it had only moved 1 square. Your pawn steps diagonally, their pawn disappears. Miss this window, and the moment is gone forever. One move, one chance. That's en passant. Fianchetto. It sounds complicated. It isn't. You push the pawn in front of your bishop 1 square and place the bishop on that long diagonal. Now your bishop controls the longest diagonal on the board. It sits there quietly, watching everything, while your opponent wonders when it's going to strike. Zugzwang. German. Roughly, compulsion to move, and it's one of the worst positions you can be in. Normally in chess, making a move is good. In Zugzwang, every move you make makes things worse. If you could just pass, you'd be fine. But you can't, so you lose. Any move loses. The position was fine, until it was your turn. Zugzwang. The cruelest word in chess. Tempo. In chess, tempo doesn't mean beats per minute. It means turns. 1 tempo equals 1 move. Gaining a tempo means forcing your opponent to waste a move. White attacks the queen with the bishop. Black has to move the queen. That's a tempo lost. While black is retreating, white develops another piece. 2 moves in, and white is already a whole tempo ahead. At high levels, 1 tempo can decide an entire game. Tempo is invisible. That's why it kills you before you notice it. 3 tactics. Every beginner confuses them. Here's the difference. Fork. 1 piece attacks 2 pieces at the same time. Your knight jumps in. Their king and queen are both under attack. They can only save one. You take the other. Pin. 1 piece can't move because moving it exposes something more valuable behind it. Their knight sits between your bishop and their king. Move the knight and the king is in check. So the knight is frozen. Useless. Skewer. The reverse. Your rook attacks their king. King moves. You take the queen hiding behind it. Fork, pin, skewer. 3 words. 3 different ways to win material for free. Gambit. A gambit is when you sacrifice a pawn in the opening in exchange for something you can't see on the board yet. Development, space, attacking chances, time. You give up the pawn. Your opponent takes it. Now they're 1 pawn up, but 2 tempos behind. By move 7, you have a deadly attack, and they have an extra pawn they can't use. Prophylaxis. This separates players who react from players who think ahead. Your opponent has a knight that wants to land on d5. From there, it dominates the whole board. So before they get the chance, you push your pawn to c4. Now d5 is covered. Their best plan is gone. You didn't attack anything. You didn't win anything. Pawn structure. Pawns can't move backwards. That's what makes this matter. Your pawn structure is the shape your pawns make across the board. Once you've created it, you're mostly stuck with it. A doubled pawn, 2 pawns on the same file. They can't defend each other. An isolated pawn. No friendly pawns beside it. Permanently vulnerable. A backward pawn. Can't advance, can't be defended, just sitting there being attacked. A strong pawn structure is invisible until the endgame. Then it decides everything. Perpetual check, the last resort, and sometimes the perfect escape. You're losing. Your position is gone. Checkmate is coming. But your queen can give check. And then check again. And then check again. If the king can never escape, it's a draw. Now go use them. Every chess player thinks they play chess, but what you do at 400 looks nothing like what happens at 1,600. This is what the game actually looks like at every level. 400. This is where everyone starts. And it looks exactly like you'd expect. Both sides move pieces randomly for the first 5 moves. Nobody develops with a plan. They develop because they heard you're supposed to. The queen comes out on move 2. Bishops get trapped behind their own pawns and never escape. Here's how a 400 game ends. Not checkmate. Almost never checkmate. It ends because someone leaves their queen where a pawn can take it, or hangs their rook, or forgets the bishop is under attack. The average 400 game ends in a blunder before move 20. 800. Something has changed. These players know the basic rules. They've stopped blundering their queen on move 3. Now they blunder it on move 12. At 800, every game has the same 3 threats: scholar's mate, back rank checkmate, and the fork on move 7. Players at this level either set these traps or fall into them. There's no middle ground. 1200. This is where chess actually starts. At 1200, players stop blundering for no reason. They see one-move threats. They castle consistently. They've learned 1 or 2 openings and actually remember the moves. But here's what still goes wrong. They reach a good position out of the opening, and then have no idea what to do. The plan disappears. They start shuffling pieces, waiting for something to happen. Someone eventually gets bored and attacks badly, and loses. At 1200, the opening is solved. The middle game is a mystery, and the end game completely ignored. 1600. The jump from 1200 to 1600 is the biggest gap in amateur chess. At 1600, players calculate. Not perfectly, but they look ahead and actually find threats. They know basic endgames. They recognize tactical patterns before they happen. But what really separates 1600 from below is this: they punish mistakes. At 800, if you blunder a piece, your opponent might not even notice. At 1600, they notice. Every time. 1600 chess is sharp. It's fast. It's punishing. And it still ends in blunders, just much, much later. 2000. Expert level. 1 step below master. At 2000, games don't end in blunders. They end because one side was slowly, quietly worse. For the last 15 moves, no single mistake, just a position that compressed until there was no space left. 2000 players don't attack when they see an attack. They attack when the position demands it, and not a move sooner. They spend 10 moves improving every piece before anything happens. Then it's already over. The game is quiet, precise, and completely ruthless. You can't see why 2000 players win. You just see that they always do. 2500. Grandmaster level. Chess isn't the same sport anymore. The computer says the position is equal. The Grandmaster already knows who's winning. Grandmasters win games that shouldn't be winnable. They find resources in positions where there are no resources. They defend for 40 moves and then counterattack in 1. The biggest difference between 400 and 2500 isn't tactics. It isn't openings. It isn't even endgames. At 400, you react to what's on the board. At 2500, you see what the board is about to become. 6 levels, 1 game. Which one are you? Everyone knows how the pieces move. Nobody explains what they actually control. And when they become useless, this is every chess piece. The pawn. the weakest piece on the board. Also the most important. A pawn controls two squares diagonally in front of it. Not the square it's on, not the square ahead. The two squares it threatens. That's what beginners miss. A pawn's power is in what it attacks, not where it stands. A pawn on a 4 controls d5 and f5 permanently. No piece can comfortably occupy those squares without being taken. Here's when a pawn becomes dangerous. When it passes all the enemy pawns, and nothing can stop it reaching the back rank. A passed pawn isn't a pawn anymore. It's a threat that has to be stopped. Or it becomes a queen. The pawn is slow. It can't retreat. It can't jump. But every grandmaster has said the same thing. Pawns win endgames, not pieces. Pawns. The knight. The strangest piece on the board. The knight doesn't move in straight lines. It jumps, and because it jumps, it ignores every piece standing in its way. A knight in the center controls 8 squares simultaneously. Move it to the edge, it controls 4. Move it to the corner, 2. First rule of the knight: centralize or die. The knight is at its best in closed positions, locked pawn structures where bishops are blocked. In those positions, the knight jumps over everything while the bishop does nothing. The knight is weak on an open board with no outpost to land on. A knight with nowhere to go is just a piece waiting to be traded. The bishop, fast, covers the entire diagonal in one move, but it has a problem it can never escape. It stays on its color. Forever. Your light-squared bishop will never touch a dark square. If your pawns are on light squares, your bishop is blocked by its own army. The bishop dominates in open positions with long diagonals and no pawns in the way. 2 bishops working together cover the entire board. The bishop suffers in closed positions with pawns locked on its color. A bishop blocked by 6 of its own pawns isn't a piece, it's furniture. Strong players ask one question before keeping or trading a bishop. Are my pawns on the same color as my bishop? If yes, trade it. The rook, the second most powerful piece in chess. And for the first 20 moves, it does absolutely nothing. In the opening, the rook sits behind pawns and waits. It can't jump. It needs open files, columns with no pawns blocking them. Until that happens, the rook is a spectator. In the endgame, everything changes. Pawns get traded, files open, and the rook controls the entire board. A rook on the 7th rank, attacking enemy pawns from behind, is one of the most powerful positions in chess. The rook is the reason you fight for open files in the middle game. Not for now, for later. When the board clears and the rook finally wakes up, the queen, the most powerful piece on the board, also the most overused, most misplaced, and most frequently lost piece below 1,400. The queen moves anywhere, any direction, any distance. That power makes beginners bring it out immediately. Then spend the next 10 moves running it away from every attacking piece. Every time the queen retreats, the opponent develops another piece. That's a tempo lost. Every single time. The queen is lethal late in the game. When the board is open and pieces are coordinated, the queen is a liability. When it's alone in enemy territory with no support, it doesn't need to be active every move. It needs to be ready for the right moment. That moment is usually not move 3, the king. The whole game exists to protect this piece, and in the endgame, it becomes one of the strongest pieces on the board. In the opening, castle, hide the king. A king in the center is a magnet for attacks. But in the endgame, the queens come off, the major pieces disappear, and everything changes. The king marches to the center, controls squares, supports pawns, and cuts off the enemy king. The difference between winning and drawing an endgame is often one king position, one square closer, one move earlier. The king is the only piece that transforms completely between phases. Dead weight in the opening, weapon in the endgame. 6 pieces, all different, all connected. Now you know what they actually do.